Have you ever said something you thought was totally motivating, only to watch it just completely backfire? You know, that awkward moment where your good intentions somehow cause the exact opposite reaction? Well, today, we're going to dive into the fascinating psychology behind why some people just absolutely cannot stand being compared to others.
Why can't you do what they did? Oof, that's a phrase that can just echo in your mind, can it? Maybe you heard it from a parent, a boss, or even a well-meaning friend. And look, for some people, those words might be a helpful little nudge, but for others, it's a total gut punch.
And that really is the big question, isn't it? Motivation or rejection? How can the exact same sentence feel like a helpful push to one person, but like a complete and total dismissal to someone else? The answer isn't about them being overly sensitive. Nope. It's all about some pretty deep-seated psychological wiring. So let's start by looking at the reaction itself.
All right, so let's talk about that reaction. It's usually super immediate, and man, it can be intense. You can literally feel a friendly, easygoing conversation turn completely frosty in a split second. And it all starts with one simple little comparison.
I mean, you've definitely seen this happen, right? 1 minute, everything's totally fine, you're having a good chat, and the next, after a casual, hey, you should be more like so-and-so, the whole vibe just tanks. The person shuts down, maybe they get a little angry, or they just go radio silent. So what is really going on inside their head?
And here it is. This is the crucial piece of the puzzle. For people who hate comparison, your words don't land as helpful advice, not even close. Their brain processes what you said as a direct threat.
Now look, comparing ourselves to other people is actually a totally normal human thing. Psychologists call it social comparison theory. It's kind of how we figure out where we fit in the world. But for some people, this very normal, everyday process gets supercharged with a massive stress response. And this slide just lays out the fundamental disconnect perfectly. Over on the left, you see the intention. You think you're offering some helpful advice, a bit of motivation. But look at how it's actually received on the right, as a judgment. A message that flat out says, you are not enough. You think you're giving a friendly tip, but to them, it feels like their entire identity is under attack.
So that reaction we talked about, the anger, the silence, the pulling away, that's not them being immature or childish. It's a self-preservation instinct kicking in. Their brain has literally flipped a switch and gone into defense mode to protect their sense of self from what feels like an assault.
So where does a reaction that powerful even come from? Well, you might not be surprised to hear that the roots often trace all the way back to our earliest experiences, back in childhood. For a lot of people who are really sensitive to comparison, their childhood was just this constant series of evaluations. You know, they were always being measured against a sibling who was maybe more athletic, or a cousin who always got better grades, or that one classmate who was just effortlessly popular. And this phrase really gets to the heart of the wound. Over time, they stopped feeling like they were being seen for who they actually were. Instead, they just felt like they were constantly being evaluated for how they stacked up against everybody else. An experience like that built this really dangerous belief system called conditional self-worth. It's that deep, underlying feeling that love and acceptance aren't just a given. No, they have to be earned through your performance. So when you compare them as an adult, it doesn't just feel like some random one-off comment. It feels like you're pushing a giant button that activates all that old pressure to prove their worth all over again.
And here's the bottom line. While comparing someone to a high achiever might be intended to inspire them, for these individuals, it just triggers shame. And shame is a terrible, terrible motivator. It doesn't make someone think, oh yeah, I'll do better. It makes them think, I'm never going to be good enough. And that feeling, it just shuts a person down completely. Okay, but here's where it gets really ironic. The very same people who can't stand being compared to others by you are often trapped in this world of incredibly harsh self-comparison. They are their own toughest critics, by far.
Yeah, these individuals often have ridiculously high internal standards. They're the ones constantly pushing themselves, analyzing every little thing they do, always striving to improve. So when some outsider comes along and makes a casual comparison, it can feel not just redundant, but kind of insulting. Like all of that intense internal effort they're putting in is completely invisible to you.
And this really highlights a fundamental difference in how they see the world. For them, success is all about personal progress. That's what you see over on the right. The question that drives them is, am I better today than I was yesterday? But comparison tries to drag them over to the left, into a world of competition, a world where success is all about your ranking against other people.
And that's just not the game they're interested in playing.
So when you start putting all these different pieces together, you get a much, much clearer picture. And it lets us move away from judging the reaction and toward actually understanding the person behind it.
So, let's do a super quick recap. Why do some people hate comparison so much? Well, first, their brain literally reads it as a threat. It also reopens old wounds from a childhood of being constantly evaluated. Plus, it triggers shame, which is the opposite of motivation. And don't forget, they're already their own biggest critic, and they're focused on personal progress, not on beating someone else.
And that, right there, is really the whole point. This isn't about figuring out who's right in an argument. It's about empathy. It's about understanding. Once you grasp the deep psychology at play here, you can stop seeing their reaction as some kind of flaw and start seeing them much, much more clearly.
So, I'll just leave you with this question to chew on. Now that you know the why behind this really intense reaction, how might that change the way you talk to, motivate, and connect with the people in your own life? What kind of new conversations suddenly become possible?